in telling you this story, I've got a number of topics I want to range through, and I thought it's a little bit difficult conceptually, so I'm going to take you on a tour through my virtual house. And so we're going to visit a number of rooms. And in the first room, I share the first room with these characters here. So these are my long-standing colleagues in the Centre for Free Radical Research, Christine Winterbourne, Tony Kettle and Mark Hampton. And we've been working together for a long time, and it's a wonderful working partnership. But in this room, there are two other people. One of them has arthritis and one has pneumonia. And so this is to illustrate that this is the topic of our research. So we broadly cover the reasons why this person gets arthritis and why this person gets pneumonia. And both of these conditions are a result of inflammation, either chronic or acute. And if you were to look, I want you to remember this picture of a lung with pneumonia. So in a normal healthy lung, you've got lots of open airways, and in a pneumonia lung, you've got a blocked part. So in this part, the air can't get in. And so this is what you might see on an X-ray, but we would ask, what's going on there? And that brings us to the cell of interest, which in this case is the neutrophil, which is one of our white blood cells, and probably it makes up half of our circulating white blood cells, and it's the first cell to respond in an infection. And so these cells, they circulate in your bloodstream. You can see them here. This is a section through a blood vessel, and they often sit on the side of the blood vessel because most of the infections and inflammation happens in your tissues, not in your blood. So these cells have got to get out, and they receive signals when there's something wrong in the tissues, and they migrate through the tissues and then through the wall of the blood vessel and into the tissues, and that's where they carry out their business. And their business is this. So fundamentally, these cells are our bacterial and pathogen killers. They're the first responders to infection, and they do this. Here's a picture of one cell here engulfing a bacterium. They do this by literally swallowing that bacterium and killing it inside themselves. Now, this process has been known for quite a long time, a very long time, in fact, and it was this man, Ilya Mechnikov, who first saw this phenomenon happening down the microscope, and he called it phagocytosis. And he saw it happening in a starfish larvae and realised that this process is common across most organisms. And so if we look at a cartoon diagram of that, so this is a slice through a neutrophil. The process that happens is that the bacterium gets taken up, and when it's inside, it's enclosed in a particle. So it's completely removed from the outside of the cell and the inside of the neutrophil. And the neutrophil's full of these things called granules that contain toxic enzymes and things that can kill bacteria. The neutrophil empties that into that compartment, kills the bug, and then digests it up into all its component parts. And so it recycles the bad things in your body into things you can use, so the good things. So nature's the ultimate recycler. So our interest in the neutrophil is how does it contribute to those disease states? So what does it do in the acute inflammation and what does it do in the chronic inflammation? Because it's intimately involved in both. One of the things that neutrophils make in abundance is this compound here. Now, everyone will recognise that as a very common household antibacterial agent. So you use it to get rid of bacteria in your house because it will kill most things. And in the neutrophil uses it because the neutrophil needs to kill most bugs that it comes in contact with. So it's very good at doing that. What does that mean for disease? Well, for the pneumonia patient, that's good news because it will kill the bacterium in the pneumonia. In the arthritis patient, that's bad news. And the reason it's bad news is that here, in the arthritis patient, the neutrophil is directing its oxidants not at a bug, but at your knee or your back or any other autoimmune disease. It's directing those oxidants at you, and therefore this is one of the main causes of damage. So this area of research has been one of our major interests for quite a number of years, and there's still a lot to learn, but we have learned a lot about the production of genola by these cells. And so here's an example of some of the work we're currently doing with this. This is Stephanie Bozanay, who's been looking at how these oxidants affect the walls of our blood vessels. So in the case of atherosclerosis, the cells that line the walls of our blood vessels, there's a normal tissue here, and you can see that these cells here are looking pretty knackered. So we're looking at the way that these oxidants cause damage and what we can do to prevent it, if anything. And that brings me to the main topic of my talk, which is vitamin C and the role that it plays in conjunction with all of these mechanisms. So it was because we were interested in neutrophil oxidants that we started looking at vitamin C, because it's an antioxidant. And in the process of doing that, we have discovered that there are a whole lot of other activities of vitamin C that have impact in almost every aspect of our lives. This has kind of dragged me off in another research direction, but one that I think is very fruitful and very important. So everyone thinks they know everything about vitamin C. We all know we need it. That's about as much as actually all we know. We know we need it. We're trying to figure out why. Well, vitamin C is this small molecule. It's made from sugar. And it's made by plants and in the livers of most animals. So most animals don't need to eat anything with vitamin C in it. People, on the other hand, and other primates, guinea pigs, and some fruit bats can't make their own vitamin C. So somewhere in our evolutionary history, we've lost that ability to do that. So we must get it from our diet. So therefore, for us, it's a vitamin. So our interest in the neutrophil led us to think about, okay, here's a cell that makes a lot of oxidants. It also, if we look at where vitamin C is in our bodies, we take it in from our food. It gets distributed around our body and it gets taken up into our tissues at various levels. And the thought is that the level that your body accumulates it at is indicative of how essential it is to that organ. For example, it's really high in the adrenals, pituitary and retina. It's also high in the brain, white blood cells, pancreas, liver, lymph, and also it's relatively high, but the lowest body stores are in skeletal and heart muscle. So people have, ever since we've known about vitamin C and they've looked at this distribution, think, what is it doing in all of these tissues? And so we asked this question around white blood cells, which is the thing that we're interested in. And it's been a process of discovery and theorising. And what I'm going to do is just take you to our findings. And they centre around the effect of vitamin C on neutrophil function. So these are the cells that engulf and kill bacteria. And if you remember back to that X-ray of the person with pneumonia, then this is what's happening. So this is a microscope view of the lung. So this is a normal lung here, which has got nice big air space, which is what you need when you take a deep breath. When you get an infection, so this is after 8 hours, you see that those air spaces getting filled up. Well, what's filling those up are these white cells, the neutrophils. And after 2 days, the air space is full. So that whiteness that you saw on that X-ray is this. It's full of all these neutrophils. Now what we need for recovery of that is these we've got to get rid of these cells. They might have killed off the bacteria, but we now have to get rid of the neutrophil. And how does that happen in our body? So we need to get back from there to there in order to restore good lung function. And we need to do it in a way that doesn't destroy the lung along the way. Now I said these cells are really good at causing tissue injury, and they're really good at killing bacteria, and they are loaded with proteases and enzymes that can cause havoc if they end up in your body. So we have this whole mechanism of containment of the system, and that needs to work in order to get from here to here. So what we need after the inflammation is an effective cleanup, and it's in this aspect that we're interested in vitamin C. Now normally this is what happens to dying neutrophils. So at the end of that infection, when they undergo a kind of a cell, what we call a cell suicide or apoptosis. And you see here in this cartoon, this is a normal neutrophil, and here it is on the way to cell death, and you can see it's kind of wrinkly outside and all of these little vesicles, and you see these green signals on the cell. Well, these are sending out a message to another cell called a macrophage, and they're saying to that macrophage, come eat me. And so the macrophage is the cleanup cell. It comes into that inflammatory site after the wave of neutrophils, and they clean up. And so here's a picture here of an actual neutrophil, and here you can see the electron micrograph of it underway in that process, and you can see all of that blebbing. Now, we've spent a bit of time looking at this, and we've been able to use one of our very cool new toys